a Turbo 400 that I built about 5 years ago that is on its way back in for a freshen up because something bad happened in second gear, and it looks like second gear is now in the bucket underneath it. So we're gonna tear it down and have a look, see what we find in here. The transmission actually comes from one of the mega trucks that's got a 540 big block in it. So let's start taking it apart and see what we got. Oh, that doesn't look too bad. Just a little bit of stuff in there. Sure is stinky though, for sure. Just a little bit of stuff in there. Sure is stinky though, for sure. Well, we're going to take another shot at this because somehow we ended up getting a card error in this camera, so I had to run and grab another card before I could even continue with trying to get this, what's left of this clutch apart. See if we can get this drum out of here. Looks good there. No slippage in the high clutch. None at all. It's a good looking clutch there. Yeah. Back when I did this, I used 4L80 friction in it. Oh, that sucker is stuck together. This one's not going to be easy. I'm going to try and grab my clutch tool and see if I can't get a hold of it and wiggle it up out of there. There it is. Oh. That's a bad sign. I have to say she turned the sprag clutch over. Well, we're going to set that aside for a second and have a look at this intermediate clutch, but yeah, there's nothing left of the band, which that's not surprising. Dark. Yeah, and the intermediate clutch is gone. There's nothing left. Which that's also not a surprise. Okay, well, let's see what it's going to take to get that direct drum apart and get that clutch out of there, but I'm kind of thinking that we're just going to do that one just to have a look and see, because usually when that happens, they're completely junk. All right, let's see what we got, see if we get her apart. That wasn't so bad. Get it loosened up a little bit here. It's not normally the way you take that ring off of there. But it's all puffed up. So I'm kind of thinking we're just taking this apart just for the sake of pictures. Hi there. Couldn't do that twice if I tried. He just flung off and went right in the bucket. Yeah, she's done. I don't even know if I can tap it loose. Nope. No tapping that one loose. So we're just going to go ahead and take it apart. Get the aluminum piston out of it. Throw her in the scrap barrel. Because that's pretty much the only thing that this one is good for now. Always used as the 12. What I did is I just took a little piece of fine sandpaper and made sure that the edges are worn nice and smooth on it. I just wind my seals down with it that way. You know, every once in a while you'll feel a little snag, so you just don't force it. You just kind of bump it along, and piston drops in just that easy. And just put my spring stack back in. Make sure they're even side to side. And the only other thing is you just want to make sure, being that they're loose, make sure that they're all copped underneath the edge of that washer. And I've got another clutch tool that I use with this, but since I had to get this one out to lift the drum out of there anyway, I just went ahead and continued on with it rather than dragging more tools out of the toolbox. Get that snap down in there. Easy enough there. And this becomes kind of another one of those things of, this is how we've always done it. I get a hold there and push that ring over. And then just grab it with a pick and lift it up some. And that's kind of wanting to remain in there too. Yeah, I've just got this little tool here that I've made to get a hold of it, and then just lift that whole section up out of there. Yeah, the rear washer looks good. Pull this snap ring up, which isn't actually a snap ring, it just is a cushion. And get the reverse band out of there. Rear washer. One of the items that kind of gives it away to me is this ring right here. Is how I know that somebody else has been in here since I was in it last, because I leave that ring off so that it feeds both sides of the direct piston. But let's take the rest of this apart and see what we've got. We're going to go ahead and get rid of that ring right now. We've got race in there, washer in there. drive tube, and both halves of that. The low roller clutch. That washer looks good. Silent band looks good. Oh, how do you like that? Here comes the rain. Yeah, rear planetary looks good. Feels good. That bearing is in there upside down. This bearing was just installed that side up. That's not how these go. This bearing goes in here like this. So there's a misassembly right there. We got a bearing race right here. The bearing. Yep, also that's assembled correctly. So we're just gonna set this back together the correct direction. There we have that. Washer goes in. Got a ring. Let's see. Put this in. This only goes in one way. One side's tapered, one side's flat. Matches up with this drive tube. Goes in there like that. This bearing sits lip sides up. Sits on there like that. Another one of those quick giveaways, if I've done the transmission and done it with a manual valve body, is if we look right down here, there's a plug in there. That blocks the reverse feed hole. And then also, there's a plug in them right there. That also blocks the reverse feed. We're going to continue on with the assembly of this Turbo 400. Being it was just a simple repair, it's not going to be too bad to just drop this back together. So we're going to start by dropping the band back in here. After you make sure you get that band seated down in there. Late transmissions have this, which looks like a snap ring, which technically it is. What it does is the center support sits on it to keep from wearing the case out. That's got to go in there. And then in the back of the transmission, in a stock one, there's a 3-tab hardened steel washer that sits down there. And then what I do, take a little bit of assembly lube and glue the washer back on to the back of this assembly. And then go ahead and pick this up again with my homemade tool. And what I do is I just put a little paint stripe on where that bolt goes. Pick this whole thing up and set it down in there as one big chunk. And then you've got this thick snap ring that you put in here, which it's always a lot of fun to get down in there usually because it's nice and stiff. And what I'll do is I'll just take a bar and just walk it down a little bit, keep my fingers out of its way, and then also use that bar to hook behind the piston and just pry that ring out a little bit just to be sure that it's seated. Because if that ring hops out of there, nothing good comes of that. And now what I'm doing with this one is I told the customer that I'm going to change this over to 4L80 intermediate. So the 4L80 steel plates are 75 thousandths of an inch thick, whereas the 400 plates are 100 thousandths thick. So we start out with just a seal. And a fiber plate, and then just alternate back and forth. Fiber steel. And what that does is that gets you an additional clutch plate in a 400 for the intermediate, which does help it not burn up as easy, since that was a problem in this transmission. And then what we're doing in a 400 using 4L80 parts. Now this clutch is going to end up looser than I want, so I'm going to check to see what I can do here to take up some of that clearance. Just try it with the 400 plate. Yep, and the 400 plate actually gives me good clutch clearance, so I'm going to use it instead of the 4L80. And then of course then you have another snap ring to go in there. And the next part of the 4L80 puzzle is we're going to use the 4L80 drum as I showed you earlier in the video. And then we just take that. And what I like to do is leave the clutches out of them, so it makes it a little easier to get a hold of. To rock it down in there. Let's see. Yeah, it was still missed one clutch. So they didn't quite get them lined up. So I'll try scooting them over again. And then what I'm going to do this time is actually put the band in place, because I already know that it'll drop 2 if not 3 of the clutches. So I don't have to keep lifting it up and down. Now we'll try again. We drop down on the 3rd clutch. There we go. And now what I'll do is I'll just stack the direct right here in the case. Since this transmission didn't hurt that direct clutch, we're going to just put it right back in again. And try and save this customer some money. And again, just put a screwdriver or something behind that snap ring just to make sure that it's pushed all the way to the bottom of that groove. Because sometimes they won't make it down and you don't want to jump it out. Before we reinstall the forward clutch, we're just going to pop this ring real quick. Just make sure. This transmission didn't have any trouble with 1st and 3rd gear, but we're going to double check it since it's a little bit of work to take these in and out. And ultimately, as we get a perfectly bright, no signs of slippage in the forward clutch at all. Kind of what I suspected I would find, but just thought I would better check just to be sure. And again, stick a screwdriver behind it, push it around a little bit. what I do with these, I'll just get them started, set them in there like that. And I'll just take a vice grip like so and just very lightly clamp it in the splines. Doesn't need a lot, just use it for a handle. And you need to wiggle that clutch down in there. There, and she's down. That's all there is to it. Now what I've done to try to make my life a little bit easier, I've just taken a couple of bolts and cut the heads off of them and start them down in there just to make it a little bit easier to guide that pump down in there. And there, we've got the pump seated down in there. Take those bolts out. What I'll do is I'll just snug those down a little bit like that. And since I don't like to have to put helicoils in transmissions, get the torque wrench. I torque these to 18 foot-pounds. And there we have it.